I never really expected much from the reading. Truth is, I didn't expect anything at all. My parents had always made it clear, subtly, but unmistakably, where I stood. Or rather, where I didn't. Still, I showed up. You kind of have to. It's what you do when a family member dies, even if that family feels more like a collection of strangers than any kind of support system. Grandpa passed away in his sleep on a rainy Tuesday morning. Peaceful, they said. He was always the quiet one, the one who noticed things but rarely said them out loud. A small smile, a firm nod, those were his ways of speaking. The kind of man who could fix a broken lamp with a butter knife and some stubbornness. Growing up, he was the only one in my family who treated me like I mattered. My parents? Different story entirely. It started small, missed birthdays, forgotten school events. My sister, Claire, was the golden one. She was gifted, charming, athletic, everything a proud parent could brag about at dinner parties. Me? I was just there. The extra. The afterthought. So when I walked into the lawyer's office that gray afternoon, I wasn't hoping for much. Maybe a handshake, maybe a dusty photo album if Grandpa remembered. But the check, that caught me off guard. Not mine. Hers. Claire was dressed like she'd just stepped off a runway, cream coat, perfect curls, that sort of slow, deliberate smile she always wore when she was being watched. My parents sat beside her, practically beaming. The lawyer, Mr. Halvorson, started reading the usual legal jargon, and then, without much ceremony, my parents pulled out a check. $10 million. 10 million. Handed to Claire like they were giving her a holiday bonus. No hesitation, no drama. They barely glanced at me when they said, "Claire, your grandfather wanted you to have this. As for you," they turned to me, as already dismissing, "Go earn your own." That was it. No explanation. No glance of sympathy. Just that familiar tone I'd grown up with, cold, distant, final. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat tightened, the room started spinning just a bit, and I sat there, frozen. My hands were clenched under the table, nails pressing into my palms. Claire looked over at me briefly, like she expected me to cause a scene. She gave a half-smile, like she was trying to apologize without really meaning it. And then she looked away. But then Mr. Halvorson paused. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a sealed envelope, and set it on the table. "This," he said, "was left specifically for you. From your grandfather." He slid it across to me, careful, like it was something fragile. My name was written on the front in Grandpa's shaky handwriting, just my name. No, to my beloved grandchild, no flourish. Just plain and deliberate. I stared at it. The room had gone quiet. Even Claire stopped adjusting her diamond bracelet long enough to look interested. I broke the seal. Inside, there were just three things. A handwritten letter, a tiny brass key, and a printed address. I unfolded the letter and read it silently. "You always saw the world for what it really was, not what people wanted it to be. I never told you enough, but I was proud of you. You didn't have it easy, and I saw that. I couldn't fix it then, but I can try now. Use the key. Go to the address. Everything you need is there. Love. Grandpa. _ That was it. My parents looked confused. Claire leaned in a little, trying to catch a glimpse of what was in my hand. "What is it?" she asked, voice sugar-coated but sharp underneath. I folded the letter and tucked it into my jacket pocket. "Nothing," I said. "Just something he left for me." The key was small, maybe for a lockbox or an old chest. And the address? I recognized the town. It was about 2 hours from the city. Middle of nowhere. We used to stop for gas there on the way to some lake house my parents later sold off when Claire wanted a sports car. I stood up, slipping the envelope into my coat. "I think I'll head out," I said, as calmly as I could. My dad gave a half nod, already looking away. My mom didn't say a word. Claire said, "Don't be dramatic." I didn't answer. I just walked out. And the moment I hit the sidewalk, something strange happened. I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I finally understood something. I wasn't part of their story. And that was okay, because Grandpa had written me into a new one. 2 hours later, I was on a two-lane highway, heading into a part of the state I hadn't seen since I was 12. The sun was starting to dip low, casting a golden glow over everything. I didn't know what I'd find. Maybe a shed full of tools. Maybe a diary. Maybe nothing. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like something, anything, might finally make sense. And that's where this really starts. The road to the address on the envelope cut through rolling fields and sleepy farmland. The kind of place where time felt like it paused somewhere around 1983. Radio static gave way to silence. No cell service. No distractions. Just me, a brass key in my coat pocket, and questions I hadn't dared ask in years. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, I knew I was in the right place. It was a house. Not a grand estate or some hidden treasure vault. Just a simple, weathered farmhouse with peeling paint and a porch swing that creaked in the wind. The windows were shut tight, the shutters sun-faded and chipped. But it wasn't abandoned, it was preserved. Like someone had been waiting for me. I sat in the car for a long minute, engine ticking as it cooled, palms sweating around the steering wheel. Then I grabbed the key and stepped out. There was a lockbox on the front door. Rusty, but intact. The key slid in smooth. Click. The door opened with a sigh. Inside, it smelled like cedar and old memories. Dust floated through streaks of sunlight, and the air was still, like the house had been holding its breath. Everything was neatly arranged, minimal but lived in. A pair of boots by the door. A stack of folded flannels on a chair. A faded photo of Grandpa and me, from when I was maybe 8, on the mantel. I didn't even know that photo existed. I walked through slowly. The house was small, maybe 3 rooms total. Bedroom, kitchen, sitting room. No TV. No distractions. Just books, shelves and shelves of them. Manuals, journals, old ledgers. I scanned the spines. Stock patterns of the 70s, real estate for beginners, commodities in the hidden market, understanding private trusts. It didn't make sense. My grandfather had been a retired school janitor, as far as I knew. Lived modestly, quietly. Always wore the same 2 flannel shirts. Took his coffee black and read the morning paper like it was scripture. So what was this? In the back room, his bedroom, I found the safe. It was tucked behind an armoire, half hidden by a faded rug, built into the wall. I stared at it a while before I remembered the key. Same brass. Same perfect fit. When I opened it, the weight of metal on metal made my stomach turn. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe some letters, a few heirlooms. But what I found was impossible. Bonds. Stacks of them. Certificates, notarized deeds, ledgers detailing investments I'd never heard of. There was a flash drive, too, in a tiny envelope labeled simply, "Use only when you're ready." There was a letter 2 longer than the first. I sat on the edge of his bed and unfolded it. If you're reading this, it means the others got their part of the story. I always told your parents what they wanted to hear. They never listened closely anyway. But you always watched. You always noticed. That mattered more than you know. I lived simple. Purposefully. But that's not how I started. Before I retired, I worked in real estate quietly, under the radar. Bought land, flipped property, reinvested. Did well. But I saw how money turned people cruel. I saw how your parents started treating you, like you were some burden to be managed instead of a child to be raised. That's when I started setting things aside. Quietly. Carefully. For you. Every document in this safe is now in your name. I transferred the assets slowly over the years. No one knows. Not even the family lawyer. You won't find your name in public databases. Everything's held through trusts and LLCs I created to protect it. That flash drive? It has the full blueprint. Claire got a check. You got something else. Something that will outlast it. Use it wisely. Or don't. But whatever you do, don't tell them. This is yours. Because you earned it, even when you didn't know you were earning anything. Love. Grandpa, _ I didn't move for a while. Just sat there, the letter trembling slightly in my hands. It felt like the ground had shifted under my feet. All those years I thought I was invisible. All those birthdays, those silent dinners, those one-sided report cards. And all along, Grandpa was watching. Not saying much. Just planning. There were tears in my eyes, and I hated it. Not because I was ashamed, but because I finally understood the weight of what he'd carried. He couldn't protect me from my parents. But he'd done everything he could to give me a future they couldn't touch. By the time the sun had set behind the hills, I had a fire going in the old brick stove and a cup of tea warming between my palms. The house was quiet. Safe. I opened the flash drive on my laptop. It was all there. Spreadsheets, login credentials, documents, layer upon layer of a life I never knew Grandpa had built. Commercial buildings. Farmland. Royalties from patents I didn't even know he'd co-owned. The portfolio was conservative but strong, enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. And none of it had ever passed through my parents' hands. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. Not from greed, not from vengeance, but from love. He gave me this because he saw what they never did. Because I mattered. Because sometimes the quietest people in the room are the ones doing the most for you behind the scenes. And that night, I made a promise. I wasn't going to flaunt it. I wasn't going to throw it back in anyone's face. But I wasn't going to waste it either. I was going to build something better. Something real. Something he would have been proud of. A week passed before I told anyone where I'd gone. Actually, let me rephrase that. I didn't tell anyone. They found out. Sort of. I guess someone at the will reading must have noticed I left early. Maybe my silence bothered them more than it used to. Or maybe Claire was just curious. Maybe even suspicious. I'd barely been out of the lawyer's office an hour when I saw she tried calling. Then texting. Hey, are you okay? What was in that envelope? I didn't respond. And for the next 6 days, I unplugged. No emails, no calls. I stayed in the farmhouse, exploring the property, the old records Grandpa kept, the journals he wrote. His handwriting was small, neat, exact. The way he documented his life, it told me he didn't just leave me something. He wanted me to understand it, to carry it. And I did, slowly. Each morning, I woke up, made coffee in his old tin percolator, and read another folder from the safe. There was one in particular, an investment in a local school program, made in secret to fund scholarships for low-income kids in the area. Grandpa never mentioned it, never once boasted, just quietly gave, like he always did. It hit me that his fortune wasn't just money. It was intention. It was principle, and I wasn't about to squander it. But then, the calls started to pick up. My mom, my dad, numbers I didn't recognize. Claire left a voicemail. Her voice was flat, rehearsed. Hey, just wanted to say whatever was in that envelope. We hope it was meaningful. But this isn't a game, okay? If Grandpa gave you something important, you need to bring it to the lawyer. We all need to know what's going on. I listened, then deleted it. The arrogance in that message. It was like she still couldn't grasp that anything in this world could be meant for me unless it was a clerical error. By day 10, I finally turned the phone back on. My parents called immediately. This time, I answered. My dad's voice was clipped. You've been hard to reach. Yep, I said. I didn't offer anything more. He cleared his throat. Listen, we think there might have been a mistake with the will. The lawyer said your grandfather left you some kind of documents? No mistake, I said. There was a pause. What did he leave you then? I let the silence stretch long enough to make him squirm. Then I said, perspective. Another pause. Perspective. Yeah, that I don't owe any of you anything. My mom took the phone then. She launched into something about fairness, about how they'd sacrificed so much over the years to raise us. How they thought it would be better to give Claire the check because she'd shown more responsibility. I almost laughed. I used to think I wasn't enough, I said quietly. Turns out, I was just too different from what you valued. That's not on me. We're still your family, she said. No, I replied. Grandpa was my family. The rest of you were just there. Then I hung up. I haven't seen them since. Not Claire. Not my parents. Not the old lawyer with the fancy suit who pretended to be neutral but couldn't hide the way his eyes lit up when the check slid across to her side of the table. But I have seen the difference in myself. I sold 2 of the smaller properties Grandpa left me. Kept one. The farmhouse. I fixed up the porch, replaced the windows, cleaned out the attic. Found more of his notes up there, some funny, some heartbreaking. One just said, he reminds me of me. I hope that's a good thing. I think it is. I started a foundation in Grandpa's name. Small at first. Just scholarships for trade schools and mentorship programs for teens without a safety net. The kind of kids who fall through the cracks, just like I almost did. Claire eventually sent me a long email. Rambling, defensive, then remorseful. She asked me if I hated her. I didn't respond to that one either. Because it wasn't about hate. It never was. It was about knowing who sees you, and who never will. People ask sometimes what I would have done if the envelope hadn't been there. If Grandpa hadn't given me anything at all. I think about that a lot. The truth? I still would have walked away. Because the day my parents handed Claire a $10 million check and told me to go earn my own, something cracked open inside me. And out of that crack, light came through. Not money, not revenge, but clarity. The kind that says, you don't need their validation to build your own life. That was the real inheritance. And I live in it every single day.